My name is Salima, and I will be your conference operator today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the CA Client Management Community Webcast. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question-and-answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. Thank you. I will now turn today's conference call over to Mr. Dana Gibson. Please go ahead, sir.
Morning, community in the U.S. and around the world. This is Dana Gibson, and this morning we're going to have a product update from Laural Gentry, just the latest maintenance releases and that kind of thing. And then Richard Lechner is going to give us a deep dive into the health monitoring system, which is a new big feature in 12.8. And be sure to use the Q&A section for questions. That way we can take a look at them and make sure that they get answered. Thanks. And with that, I'll pass it over to Laural.
Hello, everyone. We wanted to take a moment this morning before I turn it over to Richard Lechner, our services architect, to go over the health monitoring, how to configure that and set that up, to take a moment and give you an update on what we're releasing into the service stream. As you know, we had our 12.8 release go generally available on January 2nd. We do have a number of clients already upgrading, and I just wanted to take you into some of the service stream deliverables. So if you are implementing 12.8, you know what is out there and what is coming very shortly. So after we did the GA release, we did release a patch to add a command line interface enhancement. It allows you to add some parameters to enable the ability to unregister the scalability server and remove any of the inventory and history records. So that is out there available right now. And then at the end of March, we released Windows 8.1 and Windows Server 2012 R2 support. As people started upgrading to 12.8, we got the feedback that they wanted to use the latest release of Windows servers, because as they were upgrading to 12.8, they were also upgrading their infrastructure, moving off of some of those old Windows 2003 systems and even Windows 2008. And so we added support for Windows Server 2012 R2 as part of the client automation infrastructure, so you can use that as an enterprise domain or scalability server. We also released an encryption component update. So those are all available right now out on the support site. And then in April, we have, at the end of this month, a number of patches coming out, and we'll accumulate those as much as possible. Desktop Migration Manager is going to be updated to support Windows 8.1 and Internet Explorer 11. Now, Desktop Migration Manager is a standalone utility, so that will be a new image that you can download and utilize. We're adding OSIM support for Windows 8.1 and 2012 R2, so you'll be able to do bare metal provisioning on those systems. We're adding Mac OS X 10.9 agent support. And we're updating the automated migration feature. Now, the automated migration feature uses Desktop Migration Manager along with OSIM and software delivery to configure and manage a zero-touch Windows desktop migration. So we will be updating that to support migrations to Windows 8.1. Now, that does use CA process automation content, and when you have a client automation license, you can get that content and a license for PAM at no extra charge. But you do need to have the client automation license. We're adding some web console extensions to manage software groups. And if you'll remember, in December, we announced that we had integrations with the mobile device management console. And that's available right now on any release you're on, 12.5, 12.5 SP1C1, or 12.8. You can take advantage of that integration with Mobile Device Manager. We're extending that integration in this service stream deliverable to be able to launch the MDM console from our ITCM Client Manager web console to take more active management of any mobile devices that you may be using. We're also adding a CA Business Intelligence reporting enhancement. What this will do is bypass our object level security. We were getting people trying to run enterprise level reports, and because of the object level security, they weren't able to access all of the data. They were restricted to certain portions of the data that they had the ability to see. So we are removing, or giving you an option actually, to bypass that object level security so you can get access to all of the data enterprise-wide to run your CA Business objects reports on. And then we're also updating our WinPE to support 64-bit get image. Also wanted to let everyone know before I turn this over to Rich Lechner to go over the health monitoring enhancements that we will be having an end of sprint review probably towards the end of April. It could be the first week in May, and that will be our first end of sprint review for this, our next release. And what we'll be going over that first end of sprint review are all of these service stream deliverables, giving you all of the details, the patch level numbers, everything that we can get you as far as that information, and probably also give you some demonstrations of the web console extensions that we put in. Now, if you want to attend end of sprint reviews and haven't already registered, there is an invitation to attend end of sprint reviews on the community site. It's also on the support site. We do need you to register for those because we do need you to sign a non-disclosure agreement because we're showing you non-GA code. So if you'd like to attend those end of sprint reviews, please go and register. We do have some very exciting things on our backlog that we will be delivering this year. So would like your participation in those, get direct access to the dev team and the ability to get your feedback into the release. So at this point, I would like to go ahead and turn it over to Richard Lechner, who is going to take us through all of the details, the bits and bytes of implementing health monitoring. Rich?
Hi. Welcome, everyone. Morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you happen to be. I want to talk today about one of the new features of 12.8, which is health monitoring. It's a it's a very large added component to client automation that allows client automation to be able to detect and monitor faults within its own infrastructure at the agent level, manager level, task level, et cetera. So what I'm going to do today is go through its architecture, go through how to install and configure it. Okay, so first we want to talk about what are the components of health monitoring. Health monitoring, first of all, it's all configurable in configuration policy, and I'll take you through those leaves later in the presentation. The first component that makes up the solution is the health monitoring agent. There's also a health monitoring collector. The collector is what the agents send its alerts to. And then you have the web console. We've added an extra page on the web console in order to be able to monitor and view alerts. Okay, so again, health monitoring agent, it's installed on all levels of the infrastructure automatically when the solution is installed. So it installs it basically as part of the agent installation. It's disabled by default, so you'll have to go in the configuration policy and enable it if you intend to use it, and we'll show that again in a little bit. It's loosely coupled to CAF. However, it does not rely on CAF. It communicates over HTTP or optionally HTTPS, and it sends its alerts to a collector. However, you can start and stop it with the CAF command. So if you stop CAF with the command, then the health monitoring agent also stops. Or you can optionally start and stop the health monitoring agent with the HM agent space start or stop command. There's also an HM agent status command as well in order to view its status. It then sends its alerts to the alert collector, again via HTTP or HTTPS. And you in configuration policy you specify which collector a specific agent is supposed to report to. And when we get into the infrastructure and architecture section, you'll see a little bit more how that works. The alert collector. Its function is to receive alert from the health monitoring agents, and then it can do a number of things with it. It can store the alerts, it can forward the alerts, or it can store and forward the alerts depending on where the collector is installed. And again, we'll talk about that here coming up in a couple minutes. It's an optional installation. It could be installed on a standalone server for redundancy. In other words, if you want your health monitoring infrastructure to be totally outside your client automation infrastructure, because obviously if for example you make your scalability server the collector for its agents, but if the scalability server is down, then you're not going to get those alerts because it doesn't have any place to send it. So in some configurations, you may want to have a separate machine hosting your collectors. It needs to have since it does communicate over HTTP, it does need IIS installed. It cannot coexist on a machine that's hosting an ENC gateway or router. So if you have an ENC gateway or router, you would have to have a separate installation for your health monitoring collector. Normally, your ENC gateway or router would be a separate machine. You would not normally, except perhaps in a lab environment, you wouldn't be putting ENC on a scalability server or domain manager, so you wouldn't have any conflicts in a full architecture in most cases. And again, each collector can either store the alerts and view them in the web console. They're stored in the MDB. You can forward the alerts. That's usually the role if the machine is mounted separately or on a scalability server where there is no database. Or you can store and forward alerts. So you would store them at perhaps the domain manager, and you would also forward them to an enterprise manager so you can have a consolidated view of alerts. And all that is configurable. Once you get an alert, the alert collector can take actions on the alerts. It can send an email, it can send an SNMP trap, or it can send to the Windows Event Console, or it can send to the CCS Event Manager. So as you configure the alerts, you basically configure what alerts you want to take what actions. In the web console, a page has been added to the client automation web console. On that web console, you can view the alerts, you can purge the alerts, or you can add a comment to the alert. And I'll take you through that in a little bit. Okay, now we want to talk about the architecture of health monitoring. Okay, as we talked about earlier, the alerts are all configured in configuration policy. So CCNF, which is the configuration manager component of client automation, is where you would build those configurations, and then you would deliver those configurations to the appropriate nodes, the collectors or the agents. So from a ITSAM Explorer or a Client Automation Explorer, you would make the configuration changes. You would schedule those configurations to be deployed to specific agents or collectors. The next layer down, you have the alert collector. The alert collector collects the alerts, and then sends out the appropriate actions upon those alerts that we discussed. They can be stored at the enterprise manager. Again, it's stored in the MDB. A typical installation would, if you have an enterprise, as this picture is showing, is you have a collector at the domain, at the enterprise manager that collects all the alerts together, or perhaps you'd only forward specific ones, maybe only critical ones that you want monitored at the enterprise level. Perhaps maybe some, depending on your infrastructure, you maybe have local people managing at a lower level. So for agents, for an example, maybe you wouldn't want to have if an agent had a problem, you wouldn't necessarily need to forward that one. You would only forward ones that are perhaps taking place at the domain itself. Then you would also have a health collector at the scalability servers, or again, as I mentioned, these could be standalone machines, because to have the scalability server be the collector for the agents themselves, if the scalability server were down, then you may not ever get messages that agents were down because the scalability server is down. And and the same thing goes all the way up the tree. If you have the scalability servers reporting to its domain manager, then you may not get those alerts. So in a redundant environment, you'd perhaps want to have a standalone health monitoring infrastructure. And then the agents then report to their appropriate collectors, typically a scalability server. Okay, we already discussed this, but let's cover, make sure we got it all covered. Normally, alert collector are installed on the domain manager and scalability servers. They don't rely on CAM or CAF, so the concept is we do monitor if CAM is down or if CAF is down, and we'll send an alert appropriately. If CAM or CAF are down, you'll still get alerts because it uses HTTP. If the alert collector server itself is down, then you're not going to get alerts, obviously. An advanced redundant configuration will send alerts to a collector on a server that's not part of the machine's normal CAM and CAF traffic. So again, you may want to consider, it is costly. Don't forget you're talking about extra servers in this case, but you may want to have a separate infrastructure for health monitoring if it's that important to you. More redundant is more costly. Okay, we'll talk about the alert types. Okay, here are the predefined out-of-the-box alerts. This is basically a screenshot from the manager. So agent not able to communicate to the scalability server, CAF not working, CAM not working, components of CAF not working, different type of engine alerts, or one of the CAF components doesn't start, or the scalability server is not able to communicate to the domain manager. Those are the out-of-the-box alerts that are predefined. As part of the solution, we have DLLs or executables that they know what to look for to detect if these events have taken place or not taken place properly, I guess would be the word. You can also have custom alerts. A custom alert is basically a DMS script that you would register with health monitoring. The script itself must be installed in the scripts directory of the agent that's going to run it. So if you're going to be monitoring an agent level, you'd want to make sure you deposit the DMS script onto all your nodes. The default location for that is noted here. It's the client automation root directory, health monitoring, scriptster. But that also is configurable in configuration policy. If you wanted to have it somewhere else, you can. Inside of your script, in order to actually trigger the alert, you would basically call this executable hm alert op formatter.exe, and then you would pass The parameters alert condition exist equals 1 and raise alert now equals 1. So you basically, you would have your script. Well, let's say you wanted to be alerted for low disk space, especially on perhaps a scalability server. So you would have something that would run, that the health monitoring agent would run periodically, and that's the periodically is configurable, which I'll show you when we get into configuration policy. So it basically will run the script every so many minutes or so many hours to perhaps detect the amount of disk space. And if it's, because you obviously wouldn't be able to stage any packages or perhaps even collect any inventory if you didn't have any disk space left on your scalability server. So monitoring that would be somewhat critical in a case of a scalability server. So you would basically have your script that would go through, detect disk space. If the disk space is less than 10% or less than X number of megabytes in size, or however you wanted to write that, you would then trigger an alert. And then that alert would get sent to the collector, and then an action can be taken, such as an email or trigger an event in CCS if you have CCS installed, just like any other alerts that we've already discussed. Okay, custom alerts. So here's an example I created. So you would do an add in the bottom left corner, and the alert name would be low disk space. The script that it would run is low_disk.dms. That's the script that I've written. Parameters in this case are 10. I'm saying 10%. So if there's less than 10% of available disk space, that would trigger the alert. And it's triggered to run on the scalability server. You might also want to be running it on the domain manager in this case. And then how often do you want it to check? In this case, I'm saying I want it to run every hour. If it was there the first hour, I wouldn't trigger an alert yet. I would trigger the alert only after 2 hours. So if the disk space cleared itself up, within the 2 hour period, then the alert wouldn't actually get triggered. Okay, some of the predefined alerts have parameters that are configurable for you. For example, the asset job alert is configurable. An asset job not run in a period of time will trigger an alert. This alert can be triggered based on the job name. So you may want to have different alerts for different types of jobs. Some jobs may not be as critical to you, or you may not need to know as soon as some other jobs. So you wouldn't want to be getting notification on every job that fails necessarily, or maybe you would. And that's, again, it all depends on your infrastructure and exactly what you're looking for. You can trigger only if it's assigned to a group or to an individual. So you can basically say only send me alerts if it's tied to this group or tied to this specific object. And again, it can be based on group membership. So if the machine is a member of the scalability server group, then I want to be triggered. If it's a member of the laptop group, maybe I don't want to know about it because I know my laptops aren't going to be necessarily online that often or whatever. So here's a screenshot basically of where you would configure. In this case, I made another custom job that file purge. So I would detect low disk space, and I would take an action of purging the disk. So I would have more disk space. However, at this point in time, one thing to point out is the alerts do not have an automated way of triggering an action. It triggers an event, So it can send something to the CCS event log or the Windows event log, in which case you could take a separate action and then trigger an asset job or a software delivery job. But currently, in this particular version of client automation, you can't actually take an action as part of the alert mechanism itself. Okay, so now we're going to cover configuration. Again, it's all configured in configuration policy. The agent is automatically installed as part of the client automation agent. So if you install 12.8, it's automatically installed, but it's disabled. So you'll need to go into configuration policy and enable it. The collector is an optional installation. It's basically installed as shown here. It's an extra line item on the installation wizard. So you would basically select alert collector and install the collector. The main leaves that you want to look at for configuration policy when you're looking at health monitoring would be the asset collector agent or the asset collector leaf. Under health monitoring, the alert configuration and the health monitoring agent. Also for the client, in order to enable it and tell it where to point, you would go up into the Web Services tab. Okay, so again, here are some of the configurations. First one that's critical is the alert collector role. So you would basically say, what do you want these alerts to do? You can either persist the alerts into the MDB, you can forward them, or you can store them and forward them are your options. And now, which manager do you want the alert collector to connect to? In this case, everything's local for me, so it's basically connecting to the manager itself. That is my manager, but if I had the collector installed on a scalability server, pointing to the manager, I would then put the manager's name of the domain manager. For health monitoring under alert configuration, you would select the alert name that you're interested in, or you may want to clone this alert because you might want to have different configurations on different machines. So you might have CAF plugin exits unexpectedly on laptops, CAF plugin exits unexpectedly on desktops. You may want to have multiple configurations of CAF plugins unexpectedly, or different parameters, based on what subnet it's on, or there's obviously multiple reasons why you might want to have them different. Okay, you can change the message. Like in this case, it's going to tell you the plugin name that failed and the computer name that it failed on. But there are other parameters that you can put in there as well. But these are the default messages that get sent as part of the alert. You can trigger the severity of the alert. Is it a high severity, medium severity, or low severity? The other important thing is enable. The alerts are by default set to false, so you do want to enable them if you want them to alert you. At what level do you want these alerts to take place? On EM machines and or DM machines and or scalability servers and or agents? Depending on your infrastructure, you may not be monitoring agents as closely. And then down in the bottom right corner, you have how often do you want to be notified, or how often do you want it to check on this, on what is taking place. So you would set your frequency and your threshold. Your threshold is how often you want the alerts to actually be sent. So you would configure each alert as needed. Health monitoring agent. Again, by default, the agent is set to false, so you want to change it to true, or you're not going to get any alerts. Where do you want the agent to report? So you go up under Web Services Client Health Monitoring, and you put the host name or IP address of where its collector is. Obviously, you can use the host name if you have reliable DNS. If you don't, then you can use the IP address. Okay, so once you've made your configurations, you then want to just like any other configuration policy, you want to seal the policy. You want to wait for the configuration policy to deploy, and then you want to check the status of the health monitoring agent. So if you do the command HM agent status as it shows here, it shows that the agent is enabled and running. If I didn't have it enabled, it would show disabled. Or if it was enabled and stopped, it would be disabled stopped. Okay, to validate if the alerts are working, you open your web admin console. You'll see there's a new alerts tab, if you can see it, the bottom entry on the left column. And then these are the alerts that my system has triggered. I can then take actions on these. I can delete them. I can update them. And when I do go into the demonstration, I'll show you examples of that. Okay, let me share my desktop, monitor one. Drag this window over here. Open on one side. Should be able to see Client Automation Manager on?
Yes.
Okay.
We do.
Okay, so if you notice here, I have the web admin console open. Here are my alerts. So I can now select one. I can update it. My screen was sitting too long, so it's got to relog back in. So I can add some notes to it. Service, desk, ticket, opened, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I opened the service desk ticket and it's opened under 1, 2, 3, 4. So I now have the status, so somebody else can come through and see the status of that. Okay, it now gets resolved, so I can come through here now that I've resolved the issue, and I can delete it. So it now disappears from the console. So this is where I would view the alerts and add comments or delete them. Or I can select them all and delete all if I want it. We get down in the configuration policy. I've created a separate policy for 12.8 features to make them easier to find. But in your environment, you would be building separate policies for specific environments. So the first place I want to look is under health monitoring. We have the collector, so we go to alert collector. So again, I would have let me unseal this. So here's where I would specify the manager where the alert collector should connect. Here's where I can configure the role. So persist alerts into the MDB, persist alerts and take actions, persist alerts, take actions and forward or just forward. So those are the options that this particular, if I would deliver this configuration policy, those are the options that this particular collector would do. Alerts forwarding. So if I was using proxy, this is where I would set the proxy settings. If I was going to use HTTPS, this is where I would configure that. Forward collector settings, where do I want to forward to? Okay, so now under alerts configuration, these are my alert templates. I can add more templates. And under alerts, we'll say CAF plugin exits unexpectedly. Okay, it's enabled. It takes place at all levels. I wanted to check on the EM every 30 minutes. For testing purposes, I changed the agent to trigger every 1 minute, so when I actually do this, I only have to wait a minute to see the alert actually take place. But that, again, is totally configurable, however you need it for your environment. There are preset parameters for each of these. It was our best guess at what would make sense, but again, every infrastructure is different, so you do want to, as you start enabling these features, you do want to set them for your environment appropriately. Okay, where is the URI to look at the alerts? It's basically where is your web admin console. Normally it's local, but doesn't necessarily have to be. So that's where you configure that. Health monitoring agent, again, this is you want to make sure that it's set to true, or else you're not going to get any alerts. As we talked about earlier, scripts directory, that's where the scripts that it runs are stored. It is changeable, so you can change it to whatever you'd like. if you need to. And the other section is web services, health monitoring. No, I'm sorry, web services, client, health monitoring. And again, where for this particular agent in this case, since it is client, where do you want the agent? Where is the collector this agent is supposed to report to? So again, in this case, it's a one server infrastructure, so it's reporting to itself. But again, those are all configurable. That is the basic configuration of how to configure health monitoring and to get alerts. So to view the alert, we'll open up a command, we'll open up Task Manager. I will simulate a problem. So basically, I'm going to crash URC host. It does start itself back up again, but it also did trigger an alert. And this one came in at 10:40. It's 10:45 now, but yeah, okay, I don't. Okay, yeah, all right. Because my system is 5 minutes off from real time. That's why. But anyway, here's the alert that just got triggered. And so again, I can now take an action on it if I so desire. Change its status to cleared. And that's basically health monitoring. I guess we can open up the lines for any questions.
As a reminder, if you would like to ask an audio question, simply press star, then the number 1. Again, to ask a question, please press star 1. And there are no questions at this time.
Okay, as we wait a few minutes, just wanted to give a few closing words. I have a very low attendance of this particular broadcast, and I was talking with the board before the meeting started. It is Passover, Easter week, and in a lot of areas spring break. So thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to attend this meeting. If you do have colleagues that were unable to make the meeting, we do post these recordings on the community site. We are also going to be sending out an invitation for another community meeting sometime in May. And so watch the community for that scheduled meeting. We will be going over the roadmap for the features that we are going to be delivering in our next release. And thank you for the people who have already taken the time just since the call began to register for the end of sprint reviews. I've had 4 or 5 registrations come in just in the past hour, so really appreciate that. Are there additional questions at this time?
There are no questions.
Okay. Mary, have any questions come in over the chat lines?
No, we have no questions in Q&A or chat.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for taking time today to join this webcast, as I mentioned before. Additionally, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me or anyone in the community at any time. Thank you, and have a great week.
Thank you. This will conclude today's conference call. You may now disconnect your line.